Hey friends, it's Wendy with Culture is an Inside Job. And you are getting ready to listen to an episode that we are just now putting out in the world, but we had recorded it almost a year ago. And in this episode, I get pretty vulnerable about mental health, my own mental health, and what it's tied to. So you'll learn more about that. But I just wanted to tell you how important this episode is to me. And not just for me, because, it helped in my healing process, but most importantly for all of you. Mental health is, as we know, a difficult thing to navigate for ourselves and for each other. And the bottom line is, I just hope that if you're struggling, you seek help, you tell a friend. It's not weakness, it's strength. And if you know somebody who's struggling, or if you don't, right? Like if that person that's always happy, or the person that seems tough, or what have you, reach out to them and just check in, because you just never know. But you are enough. You have value, and I just hope that you never, ever give up. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for being here with us today. Hello, my friends Karen and Scott. Good to see you today.
Nice to be with you as well.
It's always a pleasure. I'm excited about what's on our hearts today.
Yeah, before we hit record today, we were just talking about what we were going to talk about. And I just feel like it's the topic that is important for us to just dive into, and I know it's on all of our hearts in different ways, really is just around mental health. And I think it came up for me for a couple of reasons, and I'm just going to already do the disclaimer. Anybody watching us on YouTube, okay, I ugly cry, so that may be happening today. Okay, it happened last episode. I know. So who knows?
Just bring your tissues. That's all. We're just, you just got to bring your tissues. That's okay.
I mean, we're just all family here, right? So, but the reason that it's heavy on my heart really are for two reasons. One, tomorrow marks the 12th anniversary of Mark, who is my kid's dad, and I was married to him for 17 years. And so tomorrow's 12 years, where he died by suicide. And then the other reason is I've been struggling myself. I just have to admit it. I have really been struggling. And I feel like I'm a little bit on, kind of that upswing. But I was telling somebody the other day, I feel like sometimes God puts us, like God allows this feeling so we can be more empathetic to those who struggle with it on a regular basis. And I just get it more. Like I get it more. And it's can be a scary place to be. And I'm so super thankful for my faith and my family and my friends and my just, who, and not that anybody can necessarily pull you out of it. But I know I have people who believe in me. And I know I have a God who, who believes in me. So that's kind of a heavy way to start this episode. I just had to share, what was on my heart.
Yeah, but it's just so honest.
Yeah. Remember, we talk so much about authenticity. And I think that's the key here is the more vulnerable you can be without demonstrating weakness, when you talk about empathy, it's also giving that permission for everyone else to feel.
Yeah.
Whether it's for themselves or for you. It's that really deep-rooted compassion.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that I do that I appreciate is I was listening to you, and you know, even when you talk, like even the way you just honored Mark. You honored Mark in saying that he was like your kid's dad. And I was married to him for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
You could have said that differently, but you didn't.
Yeah.
Because you're just such a beautiful person. And it is just, if you think about, where he was and where he went and where you are right now, like my body is so tense right now. I just need to let it go a little bit.
Breathe it out, breathe it out, breathe it out.
Yeah. And I appreciate you just being open about that, because I've watched you go through that, and I've watched you be an incredibly brave woman, an incredibly brave mom, and my dog is now barking. Can you hear my dog?
Bring it on in.
My
He's got
dog
something
is
to say.
barking.
That's how you know you get an authentic, you have an authentic group and podcast.
100%.
Dogs barking in the background.
He is not happy right now. I don't know what he's going after. But I've watched you go through all that stuff and take care of your kids and everything, and what you did at McGowan Braybender, and then and my big question is, as you took care of everyone, like, how'd you take care of Wendy?
Yeah. I think that I've learned a lot about that over the years. Again, we were talking about this earlier with regarding something else, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know until after you kind of get through part of it, and then you look back. And the way I took care of myself really was by taking care of my kids, right? Like, I was okay if they were okay, and they were okay if I was okay. and again, I'm thankful for the tools that I had to reach back to, the people I have to reach back to. But I just went, I don't know how else to describe it. I just kept moving forward. And I think that's where the whole, you hear me talk about space and grace, and I'm sporting it today, people. Space
there
and
you
grace.
Go.
But I know that's where that was born from, was because, it's never really been in my DNA to stop anyway. But I just went full how do you say that? Full throttle, ahead, knowing that my job was to just make sure my kids were okay. And I also know the importance of exercise and eating right, and all of those things make a big difference. And I knew I had people in my life too that if I started going down a dark path or whatever, that I know that they'd be tapping me on the shoulder saying, what's going on. And I don't take that for granted, because there are so many people I know that don't have that. Mm-hmm. And just incredibly supportive parents and brothers, and just, family and friends. But along the way, I think, I don't know, it was probably only a few years ago, honestly, maybe max 5, where I started really noticing that, gosh, I took a pause in making sure that I was working through what I needed to work through. Part of what triggered that was I got married again. And so, as Andy and I were building our relationship, and, we were married, things started showing up that I was like, okay, yeah, there are some things that I haven't dealt with here, And so that's when I got back into therapy. I had gone to therapy up until Mark had died by suicide. But I stopped after it happened because, again, my focus was on the kids. I did take them, but they just weren't ready. You can't force anybody to, especially talk therapy. That doesn't work, I have found, with trauma. But I really found that, going back to therapy was critical because I needed to figure out like why I was feeling the way that I was feeling and processing all the thoughts that I had going on and so forth. I actually went to equine therapy, trauma therapy. So it's just funny that we had Lisa, Ari on, and what she does with horses, and it's so, yeah. So since then, I have just been, and I don't know if I've mentioned on this podcast, but one of the probably life-changing things for me that a resource that I leaned into was I had heard, I think through therapy, called The Body Keeps the Score. And this book just really helped to normalize my feelings instead of making me feel like something was wrong with me or I was crazy or what have you. I was just noticing every time this time of year that I just was not well. And I mean that mentally, physically, and emotionally. And those who know me well know that the first thing that I'll do in those instances is start beating myself up. Because I'm supposed to be the strong one. I'm supposed to be the happy one. I'm supposed to be the one that lifts everybody else up. And so when I don't feel well, it really, that just kind of hit me. It really kind of takes my value away, right? Like, that's where I put my value. So if that's gone, so yeah, so I leaned into that and I just learned so much that our body takes all of that in, that being whatever, you're dealing with from trauma. And there's so much more to the story than just, I say just, but there's so much more to the story than just the suicide. And so all of that leading up to that, stored in my body. And so I've just been learning how to navigate that. And this year, ironically enough, being 12 years later, and I think that's what I would love for people to hear too, doesn't matter if it's 6 months or 20 years, you don't know how you're going to react when you're dealing with, healing from trauma. And so 12 years later, I found myself feeling worse than I felt in a very long time. And part of it, I think I've discovered, is like I wasn't exercising as much as I usually, because my schedule is just so full and I wasn't exercising like I usually do. And I think that makes a big difference. But yeah, just mind, body, and spirit, not in the place that I typically am. So that was a long-winded answer to your question, Scott. But thanks for letting me process through that. This is my therapy, I think.
I would say that as we are not necessarily here to be therapists, but
Right.
rather as the coach and friend, one question that comes up to me would be, what do you think is different? What might be different this year? Other than, you've mentioned, working out and a lot of other things, right? Maybe some other external things. But when you did it and you went through this time well,
Mm-hmm.
To lean back into that, what would that look like? To get to have the non-negotiable exercise, what would that look like?
Well, I have a couple things coming up for me, but then I want to lean back into your question and gain a little bit more clarity. But because you asked me, what is different this time, um, you know, as I think about it, that. So my daughter, I don't think she'll mind me sharing this because it's going to be happening soon. But my daughter Madison is going to be having her first baby and my first grandchild. Hopefully the middle, she hopes, right? To middle or end of December. And so I know that, every time you go through, and it's not that I think about these things. I'm like, I'm so sad because, Mark won't be here to see his first grandchild. It's not like I'm processing that, but it is a part of it, right? So while there's such joy in that, that's why I say a lot, joy and grief can coexist, because they do when we allow them to, right? But, Andy lost his mom. There have just been a lot of things that I think have also added to it. And now I want to lean into the other side of your question. So what is
where those successful times have been for you to get through these difficult weeks in the past?
Yeah.
You mentioned a few things that were key.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get back to that?
Yeah. I think it's yeah, and I hope our listeners kind of lean into this too, because it's has to do with boundaries and taking control of what schedule I need for me right now versus me saying yes to everything at a time where I do need to give myself more space and grace. Right. And so, well, when you're building a business, it's hard to do that and allow yourself that. But also just my personality. I don't want to disappoint anybody, and I don't like to say no. But I think it is giving myself that space and creating boundaries, making sure that how is it that I can fit in my exercise, because I know how important that is.
What do you think it's costing you not to have that?
Yeah, I mean, really my mental health and emotional health, but also just of course, the physical side. I don't feel my best. I don't feel my best in mind, body, or spirit right now. And I know that's a big part of it. And the other thing I thought of is, asking the question, how have I gotten through this in the past? I think the other thing is back to what I was saying before around leaning into others, leaning into others, when, I do feel so heavy, like knowing it's okay to do that, because where I get myself into trouble, which I feel like probably many people can connect to this, is when I feel like I need to do it all by myself. Because there is a sense of nobody understands, right? And truly, like how I'm feeling, or how difficult it is when you kind of get your brain, your mind, in those, as we say, those lower levels of energy. And I know exactly where I am. And it's a struggle. And so I think there's an embarrassment about it. There's a shame about it. There's Yeah. Especially with what I do.
You just said something that super struck me. Nobody understands. And I would venture to say that every one of us who've ever felt that low, helpless, and hopeless would feel that nobody else understands.
Yeah.
And that hit me because there's an absolute truth in that, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
No one does understand.
Yeah.
No one can understand how you feel in this moment.
Right.
Which made me then think, okay, well, if the truth is that no one else could understand how I'm thinking and feeling right now, then why would I need anyone else to understand if I am the only one that understands? And what do I need to do about that understanding? Because I am the only one that can control that. What do I need? And that's what I'm hearing you say is so hard, because you're focused on so many others' needs through this. And that's exactly where the whole space and grace piece comes into this.
Yeah.
Is the importance of giving yourself that understanding, because you're right. No one really does understand. You are the only one that can give yourself that, to give you permission to sit down and work through that thought, that emotion, and work through it in a way that makes sense of, or not, or accept, or whatever needs to happen in the grace part of that. But the space, giving yourself that time and taking that really deep, self-compassionate look inward, because you're absolutely right. It doesn't mean that we don't feel and hurt and understand the thoughts, but how all of it comes together within you, that is so, each one of us are in our own little world of those thoughts and feelings, however challenging they might be.
Yeah. And you know what, as you're talking, Karen, one of the things that's coming up for me too is, like, especially because of what our podcast is and culture is an inside job, even more so important, even, you know what I'm trying to say, even more importantly, whatever, why I think it's important for, and we think it's important for people to really understand the importance of emotional intelligence and empathy and so forth, because like my logical self and my, you know, I know that people won't understand, don't have to understand, and so forth. But I think it's when, you know, it's needing people to be empathetic, right? And to have that emotional intelligence to learn how to hold the space for somebody who is feeling, quote unquote, this way. And so, you know, I think just how can we, that's why I love what I do. I hope that, you know, when I coach people and I use some of those skills that I tell them, I'm like, steal everything I'm doing right now. Because it just can, people just want to be seen and heard. Not, you know, not necessarily completely understood, but when they feel seen and heard, they know that people are at least trying and holding that space for them. So that,
I think for you, like, that's the liability of your optimism, because you're so optimistic all the time. Yeah. That when Wendy's hurting,
we may not know.
Like, you don't, and so to bring that, because, you know, sadly, like every 11 minutes, somebody takes their life.
Yeah.
So, and you're right, there's tons of shame and guilt and silence and around that. And I've learned in my own journey in recovery to share my own experience, strength, and hope. I don't have experience in that. I don't have strength in that. You do. Yeah. And many other people do. And my opinion is, if we would talk about that and bring life to that and light to that, it would just give the people the tools and the resources to be able to lift each other up and other people up. Yeah. Because, you know, I watch you and I see you around other people, and everybody sees Wendy like as this like optimistic person. I don't know if you remember Peggy Henshaw. at MB.
Yeah.
She was like you. She was always optimistic. And on the back of her chair one day, she said, "I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well."
Aw.
And I was like, "Why do you have that on your chair?" She goes, "Well, I'm always in a good mood. And when people are down, they come up and like, I feel like sometimes I pick people up and I don't feel good today. And I don't want people to think I'm mad at them." I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
And so when you were talking, I was like, "Oh, that's the liability you carry." So I don't want to say it's a burden, because it's not, because it's a beautiful thing. But I think, and then Karen would agree, it's just like one of those things, like, man, like you got to give yourself permission to hurt and to sit in that hurt. Right. And just, you've carried your family through that. You've carried your kids through that. You've carried you've just carried a lot of people through that.
Mm-hmm.
May I read your Enneagram thought of the day as a type 1?
Sure.
So it starts out saying average ones. So from an Enneagram perspective, there are healthy ones, there are unhealthy ones, and then there are average ones. So an average one wants their sense of order to rule everything. How true is that for you?
Capital T, true.
Their strict superego is pitted against their feelings and desires, revealing the dualistic nature of their psyches. So there's that strict, perfectionistic, wanting order, because that order is what keeps you safe, keeps you from danger, keeps you from those hard feelings or those things that you're longing for. That's not good enough.
Yeah. And I would say, right, like that's my inner critic too, is not good enough. Right. And yeah, that is definitely that. It's like, we all have a superpower, and that superpower can also be our kryptonite.
Oftentimes it is.
And so it's learning.
We lean on you for order. I talk about all the time, like, this would not be a podcast if it weren't for your order, for your strict ability to stay task focused and to keep us in this guardrail, Scott. And we know, if we didn't have these guardrails, me and you, man, squirrel, right? Wendy keeps us in order.
Oh, I was reading between the lines. I certainly, I was.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, right? That's why, again, understanding personality and understanding people's, like, you can't judge a book by its cover, because, it's just so, I don't know. I feel like for me, even since, talking about me, it's like, it feels like an oxymoron. Like I am this optimistic person, but if you knew the things that were happening inside this head, most of the time, like, I beat myself up constantly. And then I beat myself up for beating myself up, because, I know from a faith perspective, that's not what I'm called to do. What I do in my job, that's not what I'm called to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, it's always just trying to be enough, first and foremost, for myself. And it's ridiculous. So, but yeah. And then just on top of that, I know Karen can really relate to me on this for sure. It's just, we're both empaths, right? So it's like, it's not just being empathetic. It's like where we feel things so deeply. So not only, do you just feel, because we're human, so we all feel what's going on in the world, but it is like a superpower, another superpower that, again, if you don't learn how to get control of it, could really be hard. So yeah, I just, coming back to the reason I've opened up and started talking more about my story But I think the side of how I truly feel, it's like I can be, it's knowing, right? I can be strong, and I am strong. I'm a perseverer. I'm a, never give up. And I can also hurt, and I can also struggle, and I can also, like, those things can coexist, and that's okay. And yeah, I'm just thankful I have people like you in my life, and my family and friends. And because again, there are some people who don't have that. And I just want people to know that, yeah, like, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to share your heart and how you're hurting. And I'm right there with you. It's just like learning one step at a time that, yeah, we don't have to show up as perfect every day.
Yeah. There's, in that empath, I believe that it's the deeper connectedness to something bigger than us, right? It's that knowing with a capital K, that feeling much deeper than just that surface level of thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wendy, you talk about, a lot of people say they committed suicide, and you say died by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason why you say that, one versus the other?
Recently, that's something more recent in the last couple of years that I've learned, is that I think it goes really, this is really hard to explain, but it's I think it goes back to their mental health. Like, for example, if somebody dies, we don't say they committed cancer, they committed a heart attack, right? It's like they died by cancer, and so it's like they're not in there, they're just not them, right? And so that's the best way I can explain it.
That is very well said. Mm-hmm. That is very well said. Yes. I think, even when we were doing, that interview for One Morning, and we were talking about that, and your heart opened up like it has, like, today.
Yeah.
And man, I've seen you in a million different spots, and I'm not sure I've ever seen you this, like, I don't know, raw, and I don't want to say sad, but
raw is a really good word. Like, yeah. I'm a pretty vulnerable person overall. Like, I share my heart, but like this deep, the depths of what I'm feeling, and from I'll just say the darkness of what, that I feel like and I've been in more so. And not that I've never experienced this, but it's been a while since I felt like this. And it does feel raw, Scott. It does feel really, really raw in so many ways.
Help me understand this and be super honest about this. Mm-hmm. From the very beginning to right now, just talking about it, does that make the rawness better, or does it make it worse?
You mean from the start of this podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you mean? No, it makes it better.
It does. Okay.
It makes it better. Yeah.
So someone was listening, and their butts falling off, and they're just scared, and they're just mad, and they're pissed, and all of those things. And so your advice, just talk to somebody. Just the last thing you would say is stop talking to yourself about this.
That's right. Yeah. No, it's like, what would I say? I would say, because again, I do so many things to help myself. And sometimes even that, it's like it isn't working. It isn't working. Right. But I just think, okay, whatever it is to help you get it out. So journaling, right? Crying, screaming, but then talking to someone. Now, I understand from a trauma standpoint, some people cannot talk it through. The reason I'm getting to the point that I can share, and again, I'm just at the beginning stages of sharing my story. I honestly feel like it, but some people can't. And it's because with trauma, talk therapy does not work. And so they have to find things like I did with equine therapy, working with the horses. And so it's, it's really like body therapy, finding things that you're doing. And I forget what is it? EMDR, or, with the eyes and all those things. And if you have things that you can formulate a sentence to share what's on your heart or mind, yes, share it, because better out than in is what I say. Mm-hmm. And the more you do it, the more you'll learn how to articulate it, and the more it will normalize the way you feel because of your story. But it doesn't, it's like normal but not necessary, meaning you don't have to stay in that feeling forever. And that's how you can get out. Like the way you feel now, I've been through this enough to know that I'm in the dark, this is some of the darkest seasons. But because I've been through that and I've been on the other side, I know it won't last forever. And that's what helps me to keep going. It won't last forever.
Well said. Well said.
So there's a part here that I'm just curious about. There is a collective conscience, and that is particularly dark right now around us.
Yeah.
And as empaths, there is this significant feeling of some forebodingness about that. And not that we need to get into that specifically, but I think that for those of us who are experiencing that heaviness in the collective conscience, and who have also had significant trauma, you would be dealing with more than just the fact that this is an experience from your past, because you're also feeling like this anticipation of something else.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to separate what is this thought and what is this feeling and where is it coming from and why, and what do I do with that? If I even were to think through it well enough, space and grace. If I did reflect, if I did journal, if I did, where do you put all that?
Yeah.
But to the point of being able to have someone else there, being more objective, I think that's so important. It's just to really be aware of your own subjective perspective around your thoughts and your feelings. And if you, like you say, if you can find a way to get it out of you in some way, artistically or expressively, creatively, whatever it might be, written, verbal,
yeah,
with an animal. I don't mean that to sound, that sounded a little
nature.
Yeah.
Nature.
Get out into nature, right? Yeah. Experience the beauty of the way other animals, we as a human being, how other animals communicate and help heal. That's a better way of saying that. Right?
Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, those are all options to find a way to look at your experience more objectively.
Yeah. And I think what that reminds me of, just sharing with everyone and, that's listening to is, so what I'm talking about right now, right? And what I personally am dealing with right now, like a therapist or a counselor or what have you, is super important. And which is why when I'm typically in my healthy state, like many other people listening to this, that's why me having a coach is so important also on a consistent basis, because just on a day-to-day basis, when everything is going quote unquote normal, right? Like having somebody to process through our thoughts and emotions, whether it's at work or personally or what have you. So I think that's what I hear you saying too, Karen. It's like allowing ourselves to do that. Sometimes that we think, even from coaching, I hear it all the time. People think, well, I thought people had a coach or struggling, or, or they're doing bad at work, or they're, or they need a life coach, because things don't have to be bad to want to process or need to process through things that are going on. So I think just, knowing that it doesn't mean you're weak. It actually means you're strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think the difference there in therapy and coaching, just as a quick reminder, would be that therapy would go back and figure out where those thoughts came from.
Yeah.
Coaching meets you where you are and figures out where you want to go.
That's right.
And there are plenty of excellent therapists that leverage that coaching mindset as well to help get you where you want to be after exploring what caused you to get to where you are now.
Yeah.
We as coaches are not typically dually certified in that.
No.
So we do tend to stay away from what the cause of this and how this came about, but doesn't mean that we can't, help you identify what you want and what's in your way and help you get there. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of great coaches too that, like, I don't know, if you have a company and you've got a couple of basket cases that you don't have the guts to deal with, like great coaches, they don't want to deal with, they just don't want to deal with those people.
We're really not equipped.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we want to help, but there's certain aspects of that our responsibility to our profession would say, this is better for someone that's capable of taking you back into where this came from.
Yeah, and stay there as long as you need to
absolutely work through it together. There's certainly ways that we partner with the our therapy and counseling community for sure.
Scott, I want to just ask you. I just think this is so appropriate too with what you're doing with One Morning. So, how is it that, because we all have our way of helping, right? Karen and I as coaches, and but with what you're doing with One Morning, can you share just a little bit about how you can support both the employer and the employees to help with those that are struggling with, mental health and so forth? Like, where do you come in to be able to help make that, I'll just say, easier? Or
Well, I think from the simplest terms is most organizations have an employee assistance program. So 90% of employers have those. Only 29% of employees know that they exist, and only 5% of those employees actually use it for a number of reasons. And so the first thing is, how do you tear all those barriers down? How do you draw those back? And then really what One Morning does is it brings life to life on life's terms through storytelling. So it could be, like a lot of times people will talk about, financial fear, which at the end of the day, the truth is, who's afraid of their mailbox? Like, who's afraid to go get their mail?
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of like trying to wrap it up in this really pretty Instagram like terminology, why don't we just call a spade? And like, I'm afraid of my mailbox. And then if I heard somebody in my community tell a story about why they're afraid of my mailbox, or if I heard somebody in my community talk about miscarriage, which is something that nobody talks about in the workforce,
Mm-hmm.
workplace, or suicide, or depression, anxiety, postpartum. And so if we can tell like stories and let other people know that they're not alone, and and unfortunately our attention span isn't very long. So we have to do it in like shorts. And then, so how do we make that come alive in really beautiful, compelling ways? Because none of us, everybody's going through something. Every single person. Yeah. And, my advice to maybe anybody that's listening, and if somebody is just on your last nerve, is just look at them as like a small child. And that person had a dream, a little girl or a little boy, of being somebody, and they're not that person right now. And you don't have to be the person to remind them that they're not that person, because they know they're not. Mm-hmm. And just love them where they are. And all what One Morning wants to do is we want to do what God reminded me, is that the mirror is a wonderful place to find a friend. And then when I found myself and found a relationship with myself, then I was allowed to give away what I never had. And I never had love for myself. And now I can give it away to others. So thanks for asking.
Thank you, Scott. That's beautiful. I love it. And
it's beautiful.
I feel like I'd like to maybe wrap up with this. First of all, thank you too for holding the space for me today. This is the most I've ever probably shared about, not just my story, but just how I can feel sometimes. And I really appreciate you holding that space for me. And I think if I were to ask, and if we were to ask, our listeners to go inside, I think it's just like, what do you have on your heart and mind right now? And what are you hurting from? And who can you share that with? Like, how can you allow yourself that space and grace? And to know that you will get on the other side. And asking for help is strength and not a weakness. And then the other thing is, coming up on this 12 years tomorrow, I just want to say how grateful I am for just all the people in my life, friends and family, and my faith again, who have helped me get through all these years, and my kids. And to my kids, you are freaking amazing. And I don't know that they listen to these episodes, but maybe someday they will. And I just want them to know that I am so, so super proud of them and everything that they've gotten through. And they are going to be able to use their story in big ways someday. And I just pray that they continue to take care of themselves in the way that they need to also. And that God puts people in their life to help them do so. But with that, thank you for listening to my tears and my heart this morning or today. I don't know what time you're listening to this podcast. But thank you, Scott and Karen. And until next time, we'll see you later.
We love you, Wendy.
Love you.